I became a dementia care partner, and we use care partner instead of caregiver now because people with dementia have asked us to, because caregiver implies that the person with dementia cannot give anything if there's a caregiver and a care receiver, whereas we're partners in care in this process. So in 2008, my mom was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, and my husband and our young 6-year-old son moved in to take care of her. And my dad's a doctor. We're in Cleveland at like the best hospital in the world. And I was like, oh, these people are going to help us take care of my mom. And they gave us a pamphlet. And that's it. And they were like, yeah, all these things that your mom can't do, she's just not going to be able to do anymore. And there's like nothing we can do about it. And like as a good UU, and then also as a Montessori kid from kindergarten through 8th grade, I was like, well, that's not possible. So there has to be another way. Because I know that most people with dementia live 10 years or longer, and I just knew there was no way that it could be that we couldn't give somebody a good quality of life and that she wouldn't be able to do things that she wanted to do anymore. And so I found Montessori-based dementia care because there's the main trainings for that and things are in Cleveland, Ohio, where I grew up. And, you know, I found out that all of the things that we have been told about dementia and experience, and the things where doctors are like, well, that just happens, that's just dementia, doesn't actually have to happen like 90% of the time. And really what Dr. Montessori found with working with kids, and it holds for adults, is that when we're put in environments that don't work for our brain, any one of us would have a, quote, challenging behavior. Any one of us would struggle to function. And so Montessori dementia care starts putting people in environments that actually work for them. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that with you all today. One of the things that I always like to bring up, and that's important in becoming a dementia-friendly congregation, is understanding like the myths and things and how we kind of got to this point in dementia care. And we don't really, obviously, you know, we live in a culture that is capitalistic, ableist, and ageist. And people don't value people, the community, larger community, generally with disabilities. And so there's not really research put in how do you do dementia care. There is on research, but not on care. So how do you live your everyday life? And caregivers, there was this recent study that came out of care staff and care communities have less training than a barista at a coffee shop. So it's about maybe 1 or 2 hours if someone gets any training, and it's usually a video. And I don't know how many of us could do our jobs if we trained for 1 hour in a video on them. So because we have this lack of training and lack of understanding of care, clearly then all of even our lived experience is there's all these things that happen. Somebody is confused, they might wander, some people might get aggressive or upset or shut down, refuse to do things. And what we find with the research with Montessori care is most of the reason those things happen is not dementia, it's because the care practices are just outdated and old and aren't meeting the person where they are. So in Montessori care homes and in families that use Montessori at home, people with dementia are doing things like, actually, what are the most common activities that you think people with dementia do that you see out in the world? Yeah. And then if they go to a care community and they're like, well, here's our daily activities for people with dementia, what's usually on the activities calendar? Music, bingo, puzzles, word search, and that's about it. And it's usually the same for every dementia care community. In Montessori care, people with dementia are building things like shelves and tables, helping to fix things in the community, gardening, brewing beer, working on electronics, doing laundry, planning birthday parties for other residents, cooking, creating art, and studying music. Basically doing like all the things that we would do. There's one care community where a resident is the person that answers the phones for the care community. So an essential tenet of Montessori-based dementia care is to always ask why a behavior is happening, and you can never ever say, because this person has dementia. And that's because once we say that, then we assume that whatever the problem is, there's just no way to fix it, right? So like my mom was having hallucinations. Hallucinations are part of Lewy body dementia. She was seeing people in the house that weren't there. But through using objective observation, which is what we use in Montessori, I found it was the same time every day that she was doing it, in the same room, and it was always at night, And no, it was not sundowning, because that is also kind of another myth in dementia, that sundowning means people get worse in the evenings. It was because the lights were on inside and it was dark outside, so she was seeing our reflections in the windows, because we had really big windows in the back of the house. So the easiest solution to solve her hallucinations that the doctor said just happened and there was nothing we could do is to put curtains up. But most of that is not understood in current dementia care. So what we always do is look at, why is this behavior happening? And then we're able to do lots of things to be able to help people. So if we're trying to help people in a church, let's say that somebody is like early stage dementia and is serving on the board, and the first things that usually become a struggle are things like executive functioning, remembering when meetings are, and sometimes being able to process what's happening in a meeting. So then if we know that, we can do things like send more reminders about board meetings, have a simplified agenda for a board meeting, and then when you're speaking in a board meeting, leave more time between when people speak and don't crosstalk, because people usually need about 90 seconds to process what they've been told. And so there's lots of these small things that we can do throughout all the different stages of dementia for people to help them maintain roles and things in life that they want to do in our church community. So one of the things I encourage churches to do is to learn how to do activities with people with dementia. And clearly I don't mean bingo and puzzles unless somebody likes to do that. Everything in our life is an activity, like we're doing an activity together. Brushing your teeth is an activity. What you do for your job is an activity. Sleep is an activity, and so are hobbies. And then the leadership roles in churches are also an activity. So in dementia care, what we need to figure out is how do we set up and sequence, so that's the order of steps an activity is in, for a person so that they can do them. And we use a lot of things like to prepare this environment, like cueing and templating and guiding. We don't tell people what to do, so I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody has always helped with coffee hour and now is having a hard time setting up for coffee hour. So we could use a template in cueing by having placemats that are in 3 different colors, and then cookies on plates, or whatever the food is on plates, are the exact same 3 different colors. And when someone's placing things onto the table, you ask them to put the plates on the placemat that's the same color. Instead of saying, put the cookies on the table, put the cookies on the table, put the cookies on the table, that's a lot of verbal information and a lot of cognitive steps for somebody. And so we keep things more simple with environmental cues, with putting the red plate on the red placemat. And so there's ways that we modify. How do you greet somebody at church so that it's still accessible? How can you follow along in a worship service if you're struggling to know what's going to happen next, because that can be kind of upsetting for people, like, I don't know what's going to happen next in church. And so we might modify some orders of services for people. So a lot of what I do is I teach people how to do pastoral care visits, and then how to change things in the church environment for different members that have dementia, that you would like to make sure that you can still help them maintain their roles. And obviously, there's a lot of training in how to do that, but I wanted to give you a little bit of just a few recommendations for communication, because I think that's something that people ask me about a lot. And there's so many communication supports that we use, but the ones that I usually talk about are the leaving 90 seconds after you say something. Try not to have crosstalk where people are talking at the same time, because then people can't process what's happening. And to storytell instead of chit-chat. Again, because chit-chatting relies so much on memory. So talk about your kids and what your kids are doing, and typically somebody will then start to talk about their kids or kids that they just saw. And again, do an activity together. So if you're going to visit somebody, I teach people how to do woodworking with people with dementia. How would you do watercolor painting? How would you listen to jazz and have a discussion about jazz, instead of, we're going to go to pastoral care visit and now I have to find something to say to you, and neither one of us know what to say. So activities let our brain know what it should be doing, and that helps calm all of us. And when we set them up properly, then people are able to communicate with us a lot better. The last thing that I want to say is that we try not to orient people to time and space or correct them about where they are, what they're doing. So if someone at coffee hour is like, I'm at my Catholic church from when I was a child, that's fine. Then talk about what church is like for them. Because if somebody has enough of a cognitive deficit in later stages, some people in earlier stages want us to like fact check for them. Am I at home? They like want information, or what day is it, things like that. That's totally fine. But later, if somebody else's reality is different than ours, telling them their reality is wrong and trying to prove it to them makes people anxious and angry, and there's a lot of times where we see either like shutdown or anger and things like that. So overall, a lot about dementia care is understanding how is the brain working now, and then how do we create this environment so that somebody is more functional in it. And there's many ways that we can do that, and I think especially for us, learning just a little bit more, especially with communication, about talking with people, storytelling instead of fact-finding and all that kind of stuff, and leaving more time for somebody to speak, and guiding, show people what you want them to do instead of tell them what to do, because verbal information is a lot to process, can be really helpful. So I hope that some of these things help give you an idea of dementia care can be very different than what we see. Most of the dementia care behaviors that we see in dementia, and I know that a lot of people, like we've experienced them in our own families, don't have to happen if we change the care practices that we're using. So I look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you. And I think we might have a little bit of time for some questions before our closing hymn. Is that okay? Yeah. Yes.
I have a friend who's caring for her husband who doesn't ever want to
Oh, that's a good idea. Smart.
Two quick questions. I have a friend who's caring for her husband. He doesn't want to get out of his pajamas. He has a doctor's appointment. He can't get dressed and walk out of the house and get a car.
Yep.
That's one. And the other question is, one of our members occasionally will call me. She's in assisted living, and she says, I don't know where I am. I don't know how to begin that conversation to bring her back to where she is.
Yeah. Two very good questions. Okay, so the one with somebody doesn't want to get up or get dressed or go to a doctor's. So there's two things. When people bring me questions about dementia, I'm like, I need so much more information, because society has done this thing of people with dementia don't want to get dressed. People with dementia don't want to do these things. And then it's lumped as if it's a thing everybody does, whereas we can't figure out the why somebody's doing it. So a lot of times with not wanting to get dressed, the way that people transition someone to get dressed often is too confusing, and so we have to simplify the steps or the sequencing of getting dressed in the morning. And so what I typically do is I observe what somebody is doing with someone in the morning to figure out how can I help this person actually get dressed. Is it really more that they're having a problem? And I need to know, when's it happening? Do they refuse to get dressed when they're in bed or when they're out of bed? So if it's because they're in bed, the thing that I need to fix is why can't they transition getting out of bed? It's really not about getting dressed. If it's when they're out of bed and their clothes are all there, or somebody's saying, what do you want to wear today? Let's get dressed. That's way too much cognitive information, and it is not simple, and it is not clear, and it's not specific. So if I'm like, I don't know, I will shut down and refuse to do everything. And so when I'm working with people, I really look at, okay, what is probably happening for this person in their cognitive sequence, and where do I need to put in a support so that the task of getting dressed and things becomes accessible. Often there could also be like, I'm an adult and I really don't like being told to get up and get dressed. So in Montessori we talk about the invitation. We generally don't tell somebody, it's time to get dressed, let's get dressed, you have a doctor's appointment, you're gonna miss your doctor's appointment, all that kind of stuff, because that will not help and usually makes people more upset. So the way we phrase an invitation to do something needs to change, not only to be more simple in the setup that we have for it, but also more of this showing and not telling somebody what to do. Sometimes people will get dressed if their spouse is also getting dressed, because we have mirror neurons in our brain. We do what other people do. And so if they're both getting dressed, a lot of times the way I fix it is both of them get dressed at the same time, because then they know what to do by following their person. with your friend who calls and is like, I don't know where I am. This is earlier stage, right? Possibly. If it's earlier, sometimes I ask, would you like me to tell you where you are? And if I tell them and they're like, that's not where I am, then I know like my approach wasn't the best fit. And I would ask them, where do you feel like you are? And see what they're describing. Because then I need to figure out, is the place that they're in something that's not recognizable enough for them, and I might need to work with the care community or the assisted living on making things more recognizable. I'd want to make sure, does this happen at the same time every day or at certain times? Because the transition from doing different things during the day is disorienting to people. So people will start to have questions about where am I when they're going from like dinner to something they're doing afterwards. And if it's happening in transitions like that, then we need to talk to the care community about how do you help her know that she is safe here when she's in a transition. So when you're just talking to her, I would first kind of ask, do you want me to let you know where you are? Would that be helpful to you? And if that's helpful, then that's a great way to do it. And if that's not helpful, then, ask her a little bit about like, where do you think that you are? And then we can a little bit follow more of what's reality for them. That's usually where I start with
that. First of all, thank you, because I think you validated something for me. I remember I'm a social worker, and I remember arguing with the treatment team one time because they wanted to keep reminding this person that their spouse had died because they forgot.
Mm.
And I'm like, do we really need to do that? Oh yes. And I disagreed strongly at that point. Mm-hmm. But I do think that is probably one thing that is very difficult for family members is when their demented family member either misidentifies them or forgets who they are, doesn't know they're their daughter or son or even spouse sometimes. But I think what you said is pretty much don't correct them.
Yeah.
Thank you, because I really appreciate that very much. This particular member that Janice was talking about, for a long time with her dementia, she would continually remember that her daughter had died, mm-hmm. which was true, but it kept coming up. She seemed to have gotten better, and then as her dementia kind of progressed, it was like new to her all the time. I don't know if you have a thought about how to assist in that situation.
Sure. Yeah, so the question about where is my dead loved one or somebody dead comes up a lot, and some people actually do want to know. So here's the problem with factual memory being different than emotional memory. Some people know, and they are asking us because they know something's wrong, and they are grieving, and if we deny their grief and say, oh, they're not dead, or lie or ignore it, then some people become more upset. There are other people where reminding them constantly makes them upset and has gone too far down, like we are just re-traumatizing a person. And so that's why we talk about looking at it for each individual. Generally, when I'm working with somebody, and if someone's bringing up a child who has died, we talk about their child. Tell me about your daughter. We might look at pictures. And then I usually try and find an activity that is related to their child. So we might bake her child's favorite cookies, because what we're looking for is, so the person wants the emotional connection with this person that they loved. And so instead of focusing on all the facts and everything, I focus on how can I bring that emotional connection to her daughter back to her. And so telling stories about her daughter and looking at pictures would be a great option for that. That's a good question. Yeah, go ahead.
My mom was 54 when she was diagnosed, and the doctors believed it was possible that she had had it about 5 or so years before her diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't know if anybody or if a doctor had ever told her if she has ADD or autistic issues. No doctor had ever told me I have ADD or autism.
Yeah.
And like you were saying about people who don't want to get up and get dressed, I was gonna say, I mean, I noticed that in my life and daily
Yeah.
routine. You know, I mean, in a way, I guess I'm also worried, you know, what should I look for? How should I prepare?
Right, yeah. That is a great question. So what should you look for? How should you prepare? And I will say, if you happen to fall under the neurodivergent umbrella, which are many things from bipolar and other mental health conditions to things like ADHD and autism, which I have both of those. And a lot of the things that are a struggle for me are the same things that are a struggle for people with dementia, which is why I think I realized really early the stuff my Montessori teachers did for me that allowed me to function with multiple disabilities worked for my mom, because our brains were working very similar. And so really a lot of this is there's lots of like lifestyle stuff that we can work on, you know, everybody talks about, and these are important. Make sure you get enough sleep, you know, try and get some exercise, you know, keep your heart markers in a good spot and things like that. But also, I think we need to normalize making accessible environments. So, you know, I will not brush my teeth if I'm not in the shower. It's too many steps and I forget, and I know all this about me. So I take 2 showers a day because my toothbrush is in the shower, and that is how I make sure that I wash my face and I brush my teeth. Because if I don't like the feel of water on my face. It also feels very scary to me when I'm over a sink, and then my arms are wet. I don't like any of that, and it's so many steps to also then do all the other things. So if I'm in the shower, I do all the things at once, so I shower twice a day. It's an accommodation that I've made for myself. And, you know, we have signs up in our house that show me how to do things, like how to make the coffee, because I cannot every time. And if we normalize like accommodations, I think that that's huge. And accommodations for ourselves too, because no matter what happens to us, those will help us throughout our lifespan, whether we end up getting cognitive decline or not. And there's so many things that contribute to that it's very hard to tell in one person, even if you have the genetic marker like I do, that you will actually get dementia or a form of dementia. So.
I have 2 questions related to pickleball.
Ooh, fun.
I play a lot of pickleball and doubles pickleball. And frequently the people that I'm playing with don't remember the score. I'm talking about all 4 people
Yep.
will completely forget the score.
Sounds like that would be
And
me.
I have suggested, and people have at times listened to me, that we speak louder and we call the score out before every serve. I am wondering if people forgetting is a sign of dementia, and if the loud calling out of the score is a way to diminish the problem. And I'm wondering also if this applies to other similar activities.
Mm-hmm. So forgetting the score, it's hard because there are so many possible signs of dementia. Like my mom lost her sense of smell when she was 40, and now we know that that's probably an early sign of dementia if you get Lewy body dementia. But people lose their smell for lots of reasons, like COVID. So any one thing, even struggling with that, you know, we can't really tell. But I will say that also pickleball is a little bit newer. Is everyone playing this like new to the game in the last couple of years? Or has it been? Okay. So generally, I would say if someone is worried, then get a full neurocognitive workup. Don't go and just have them do the little paper test, because that is not thorough enough. Because maybe forgetting a score could mean that somebody's struggling with dementia. Maybe wherever you're playing pickleball, I don't know how loud it is, could be just that people can't follow because they're having trouble processing what they're saying. You're also playing a game. It's a lot to remember. You could try saying the score out louder. If this is possible, what I would do is I would bring a big whiteboard and I would just write the score in between. Because I know even for me, I would not remember the score while we're playing it. So I would lean towards making a visual accommodation instead for people. I have not played pickleball very often, so in terms of thinking how that would work, I'd have to think about it. But that's what I would go for. Forgetting things isn't always necessarily a sign of dementia, so always go to a qualified doctor and check on that.